Bobby and Ryan, I've had a lot of people request to have you on because you're the founders, you're the owners of the PLDA. Of course, there's other people in the team, Robbie, who's there, Seamus, Landon. There's a bunch of people who, put in the work every day, but you guys kind of the face, like everybody knows you. Everybody wants to know more of what's going on in the PLDA. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be on.
So let's kind of get like a little bit of background. Let's start with Ryan, from your perspective. Like, so much happened in the last 2 years, but certainly this year as well in the PLDA. So first of all, let me say you did an awesome job putting together a huge field in the open division. You of course had a full senior division. You had a women's event in Japan, partnered with the JPDA. But how did it feel for you to kind of have the whole season come together and have 128 hitters in the open division battling it out for a big purse?
I think that we were pretty pleased as far as the number of competitors goes. But it was quite a challenge. We had players dropping, and then we were trying to fill spots, and we had a waiting list, and then, balancing the different divisions. I think we really only had one, hiccup, I guess. We had one player that never even showed up. We don't know what happened there from a foreign country, so I'm not going to say who it is, but it was just kind of a weird situation there. But I love that we had as large of a group of competitors all in one place at one time. To me, the camaraderie and the friendships, that's a major part of the competition. So getting everybody together, I think, is one of the most enjoyable parts about the sport.
Does it feel almost surreal that you just started the PLDA 2 years ago and now you've got, Bryson DeChambeau's co-owner and competitor, and you've got that many people fighting for that large of a title?
Yeah, it is in a way. What kind of blows my mind is I've run competitions before in the past. I think going back to like 2012 or something, just doing local qualifiers for the Remax World Long Drive Championship. I think probably the most surreal part is when you get it set up and we're getting all of the cameras in place and the top tracer equipment and the Jumbotron and just all of the bleachers and everything. Seeing like a social media crew there and a camera crew there, that to me was like, I never imagined that I would be not just me, but the team but I would be putting that stuff together, right? Like, to me, as a competitor, you just show up and that stuff gets done and you think, wow, this is awesome. This is great. But to see it all come together, kind of some of the stuff was last minute. As you know, at the World Championships, the construction crew was coming in at night trying to finish up the new turf. So we were dealing with that. We had Bridgestone was providing golf balls, and that was like a rush order to get those golf balls there at the World Championship in time. And so a lot of things came together really well for us, but it was just a lot of it was like last day type of stuff, which is kind of scary when you're running a competition like that, but it was definitely how could I describe it? It was very fulfilling in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, it was a culmination of a couple of years of. I think we talked about 28 months we've been working on, the PLDA, and so to have that all come together really is a testament of the work and the dedication that we as an organization have, but also that the competitors and players and members, we're a member-based organization, right? And so all of that plays a major part in this success and everything moving forward as well as it's gone.
Mm-hmm. How about for you, Bobby? Does it feel like, can you enjoy it the week of the World Championship, or do you just have so many roles to fill that you're, totally occupied in the moment?
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me. I remember going back a long ways, starting long drive competitions in '92, and the first event that I actually ran specific to long drive was '98. I did a Remax World Long Drive Qualifier in Dunn, North Carolina, and I remember setting up that event, and we didn't even paint lines. I just went out and kind of marked a few corners, and we had flags and people hit balls, and we would go out and put the flag where the ball was, and wherever the longest flag was is where we had the longest ball for that set, and it was kind of an all day process. And now looking at what goes into it now compared to then, we probably could have planned that event in '98 in about 15 minutes, where I don't even know how many hours is on the clock now, but.
Excuse me for a second. I want to tell you real quick about my favorite training aid and a sponsor of the podcast, the Lag Shot. It's designed with what they call lag flex technology that'll help you to create and maintain more lag in your swing, which will give you better consistency and more speed, which we all want, right? But my favorite part is that you can go out and actually hit balls with it. It's a real club. They make a driver, a 7-iron, and a wedge. So you can incorporate it into your practice sessions to ingrain the better technique that it's teaching you. Once you try it, you'll see why I love it. Go to lagshotgolf.com/crush or click the link in the description below to get 15% off. lagshotgolf.com/crush.
But to answer your question, the double-edged sword partner is we seem to be at the grid, from as early as 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning till 9, 10 o'clock at night every day. So the thing that I don't like about it is we don't have time to socialize with the players. We get everybody to come from around the world, and I'm like a social butterfly. I like to get out and have a few drinks and carry on and talk to people and see what's on their mind and just find out who they are. Right, I just like meeting new people from around the world and things they enjoy to do, and it just seems to be all work, all day for us, and that's the one thing that I don't necessarily dislike, but I just don't enjoy not being able to socialize as much as I'd want to in the past, and after this year's event, I told April, I said I feel like I have like post-tournament depression, because we did so much work going into it, and then blam. It was over, and I'm back home, and all I can think about is I feel like the clock is ticking, and we need to get the schedule together for next year. Yeah, so.
Well,
yeah.
Bobby, you and I have had a similar conversation many times where if you have a few people fulfilling so many different positions, it's, you've got to do 20 different things, and then once those are done, boom, another 20 to go right away. Yeah. And you guys have done a fantastic job of it. Do you have any of the numbers offhand here of like the social media impressions? So I know the YouTube channel is now almost at 20,000 subscribers. The Instagram, I'm sure, is blowing up. It's been last year, there were millions of impressions throughout the World Championship, and I'd have to imagine it was exceeded a lot this year.
Yeah, I think Robbie has all the analytics as far as impressions and things like that. I know that we're over 40,000 on Instagram, and I know the YouTube channel obviously had a lot of impressions, a lot of views, and it's starting to grab some people that we're not aware of long drive before, so we're getting a lot more views on it. Mm-hmm. And that's continuing to grow, and it's something we got to continue to keep vigilant on, bringing in a couple of different teams to help us at Worlds this year with running cameras, and Hudson and his crew to help us with Instagram and the graphics and stuff. And then obviously Top Tracer this year, having live shot tracer was a big part of that because it increased the user experience from a player aspect and as well a fan aspect. So all of those things coming together, I can't wait to see the analytics on the back end here to see what we actually did capture.
Yeah, it's got to be awesome. I know, to give a little shout out to AKA Collective, Hudson's team. They did an awesome job putting together a lot of cool stuff. And like you said, the Top Tracer, when you just watch it, it's so, it pulls you in. Like you're part of the experience when before, and even on, you watch a golf event that doesn't have Top Tracer and you're just seeing somebody swing and you're like, oh, like the ball's going somewhere, but you don't know. But then when you get the Top Tracer data and you see everything, it's just so cool to watch that. And it's also really insightful where there was, I don't remember if there were a few people, like I think Colton Kalkanis was one of them and a few others where the speeds were maybe lower than, some of the faster guys, but like their ball flight or whatever it would be was perfect. And they're putting up huge numbers that were beating a lot of faster balls. So it's cool to get that insight. And then you're like, oh, well, why? I guess it's not just a speed race. There's a lot more that goes to it.
Yeah. This year, and we don't have the data yet ready to release, but this year we actually captured over 10,000 swings using Top Tracer. So to my knowledge, this is the first event in the history of the sport that I'm going to say almost, because I think there was a few misses when we got into the twilight of the amateur division because of lighting and things. But we captured almost every golf ball's speed, apex, right, the shot tracing. And that's something we haven't had in the past. I know that, LDA and Golf Channel brought in other acquisition systems, but they mainly used them for the finals and didn't get all the preliminary. We have all of the preliminary data, every round, every shot. And I've been working with Jeff Brumley. He's actually compiling that data. He loves statistics, and he's put together a really cool spreadsheet for us with Excel. And now I'm waiting on the data to come back from Top Tracer so that we can marry those two together to put the Top Tracer data with the actual yardage, balls in play, things like that. So we'll be able to get some pretty interesting statistics out, which is something we're leading to the future, right? To grow the game, we've got to have statistics, and they've got to be accurate. So that's what we're relying on.
For me, it's a win-win-win, I guess. For the competitor, it's a lot better because you have more information on what you're doing in competition. Right. It's better for the viewer. And then, of course, it's better for the people there in person because it's like a triangulation of all of this data that makes for a much more encompassing experience. So,
yeah, I think I think there'll be some interesting points to come from this. That in the past, everybody always thinks it's the fastest guy that wins the competition. And that's played out this year that that's not the case, right? It's the person that hits a better ball at the right time wins. And I think that's the way long drive has always been. Whoever hits the best ball at the right time typically wins. We used to say that the grid determines a winner, but most of the time it boils down to whoever hits the best ball at the right time wins the tournament.
It seemed to me, and I want to hear your guys' perspective because you've been in the sport for way longer than I have, but in 2017 or 18, when the AMT ball was introduced, it seemed like everybody got obsessed with speed. They're like, oh, that's 224, that's whatever. And then they kind of maybe not lost, but they forgot to focus on solid ball striking. They weren't hitting those good shots like you're saying. So is that what it seemed like from your guys' perspective? Because I don't know before that time, really.
Well, for me, the AMT ball was a little bit strange because each company actually measures compression a little bit different. So their compression table was like 108 to 129. And if you look at like the Top Flight ball and this year's Bridgestone ball, they're not quite 100 compression according to some charts. But if you go back and look at that AMT ball that was quote unquote the fastest ball we've ever had, we had multiple balls this year by Justin James and Kyle Berkshire that were over 230 ball speed, 231 ball speed. So are you telling me that if that would have been an AMT ball, their ball speed would have been 240, 245? I don't think so. I think the technology that Bridgestone is bringing is proving that a quality golf ball will produce fast ball speeds and an aerodynamic shot, which in turn should produce straighter, longer shots as well. And the conditions were not that great at Mesquite. I mean, the wind was swirling. The grass was perfect, which typically doesn't allow for huge rollouts, right? When we get on hot, fast grids like Chin a couple of years ago in 2019 or earlier this year in Mesquite when they had a lot of soccer tournaments, you see larger yardages, but that's based on ground conditions more so than the ball condition that goes along.
Let's touch on that topic for a second because I've heard it a million times at different outings and stuff, and I'm sure you guys have as well, where like this one day, I think the PGA Tour, this was a few years ago, they were playing out at Bridgestone and somebody hit a 400-yard drive. I think it was Justin Thomas. And this guy came up to me, he's like, how does a guy who weighs 170 pounds hit it as far as you do? And I said, well, he doesn't. But conditions really are important. So Ryan, like from your perspective, how do you respond when people are watching long drive and they see somebody hit it 340 and that's a huge drive in those conditions, then maybe you'll go see some competitive golf and somebody will hit it 340, but it's not comparable, right?
Yeah, I always try and tell people you have to take in consideration the environmental conditions because that probably is the biggest factor that we see. You could be at a competition and the wind could change direction and guys can be hitting it 75 to 100 yards different than the direction it was blowing previously, right? So, the how hard the ground is matters, how the temperature, elevation matters, all of those things matter. And so you're best to measure against the field that's there, right? That's kind of I relate it to golf, right? If you see Dustin Johnson is 20 under and wins the tournament, and the next closest players are 10 under, like, he destroyed the field, right? Mm-hmm. And if you were to see a guy that was consistently 15, 20, 30 yards longer than everybody else, well, he was just better than everybody that day. But typically in long drive, and similarly to golf, that the field, there's going to be a certain number of guys at the end that are pretty similar, and it's just a matter of who makes the right play or the right shot, at the key moments, and doesn't mess up, right? So I try to compare it to golf so people get an idea so that they can understand it. But a lot of times you have to take into consideration that people will hit a monster drive out on the golf course, and they'll look at that one drive and they'll think, oh, I hit this same distance all the time. Yeah. And that's not true. Like, we don't have that luxury in long drive. Like, we have to, whatever the conditions are at that time of that window of 2.5 minutes, we have to hit the ball. And it's, can you hit it further than the other three players or other player on the tee box at the moment? And so I talked to a guy today at the gym about it. He didn't realize that we had timed competitions. I think some people think that our competitions are we just hit balls all day long or something, and whoever has the longest ball of the day wins. And that's not how it is at all. You have to beat players consistently throughout the day to continue advancing. And the format that we have now, I really believe is one that brings the better players to the top. You can have really fast players, and we saw this with Justin James in the top 16. He went OB in 2 sets and still managed to get through because he won the other 3 matches that he was in. Mm-hmm. So he advances to the final 8, and he gets all the way down to the final 4, I believe, And so, but Justin James is not just a lucky guy that's fast, right? Justin James, I think a lot of people thought going into the finals that day that he was going to win, because his swing to me looked really smooth and really fast. And at times he was hitting a lot of balls in play. It just happened that he had a couple of rounds where he didn't hit them in play like you'd hoped. But if you're a consistent ball striker and you flight the ball well, and you have some good speed, you'll be competitive. That's something that we probably should talk about, is of the advantage of people, that do long drive. How does that help their golf game? And it helps you a lot because you learn what you have to do to hit a good shot, right? It's not just about speed. You can have the fastest clubhead speed in the world, but if you can't hit the center of the club face, you're not going to be the longest, right? You're better, right? You mentioned Colton Calcanis. I'll tell you a name we were looking at statistics was Sandy Porter from Canada, an amateur player. Sandy Porter was putting, I think, 60% of his balls in play. Or was it 6? It was like 67 or 66%.
59.
59. Okay, yeah. 59% of the balls that he put in, and he's definitely not like an overspeed type of guy. He's maybe like an average distance amateur guy or speed guy, but distance wise, he puts a lot of balls in play. So he's going to get the advantage of one of those to roll out at some point, and he flights the ball really well. Yeah. So Sandy Porter, he won a bunch of performance bonuses.
And the funny thing is, he was ranked 9th in accuracy for the entire tournament. So 8 people were actually more accurate than Sandy.
Yeah,
but he won a lot of money performance wise.
Aside from you, Bobby, who else was one of those players?
Well, it's a little bit embarrassing, but I was actually number 1. Hey. I had 63% of the balls in play. Rob Tietmeyer and Bobby Bradley were second with 62%, and Brian Kelly. So those 3 actually were 62% of their balls in play. So if you think about that, putting 60% of your balls in play is pretty good.
That's pretty impressive. And when you consider the speeds that they're going at that would be
not me.
Like that'd be pretty good out for a round of golf. I mean, if you're hitting 60% of the fairways, you're certainly not going to be going as fast as they were in competition. But
yeah,
I think most people would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, but I think in long drive though, there's probably not as much importance. I mean, because interesting statistic was Martin was ranked 106 out of all competitors. So. I mean, he put balls in play at the right time is what I would say. Yeah. So accuracy is important, but not necessarily the most important thing in long drive. It's just when, right? When you put those balls in play.
I thought it was really cool to see how there were two very different kinds of hitters in the final. You had Bryson, U.S. Open champion, incredibly accurate hitter. Of course, he's very fast now, but he's very accurate. And then Martin, not to say he's not accurate, but I think he cares more about getting that one good shot that's going to win. And it's cool to see how in the final two of the World Championship, the most important set of the year, you had two people with different strategies. A lot of people maybe wouldn't understand that there are big differences of hitters in the sport.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
At the top level. It's not like there are different kinds of hitters that are squeaking by. I was like, they're dominating. They're getting to the top two in the world.
Well, be clear, I wasn't saying that Martin's not accurate. When you hit more sets, your percentage will drop because you're having to hit more balls, right?
That's true.
So, but still,
yeah, no, I get it. There wasn't any, anything pejorative about it. It was just an interesting.
Look at it. I mean, Justin James was in the Final Four, and I mean, he went OB, so he's one shot away from being in the Final Two. There's a lot of scenarios that people don't actually follow because I guess maybe they're more concerned about their own results over watching like what somebody else does and how that would affect the competition and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was. Let me
dive a little bit deeper into the format, and I know the long drive audience I think might like this conversation. If you're not a long driver, maybe skip ahead like a minute or two. But let me just ask: there have been a lot of different conversations and comments about changing the format, about modifying the format and other formats that we've had in the past. So first, let me say, and I've said this on a bunch of other episodes, that I think the format right now is awesome. The round robin gives people 5 opportunities to hit guaranteed. So if you show up to an event, in the past, a lot of times it was double elimination where you might show up and you might lose your set. And then you might have a bad one the next one and you're gone for the day. You're done. Now you're guaranteed 5 sets. So if you're just learning, you're just getting into long drive, that's a great way to go. It also has kind of a buffer on it where, like you were saying, Justin James had 2 OB sets, but he still advanced because he won his other 3. So it does allow for the faster hitters, the longer hitters, the more consistent hitters to advance. I did hear, and actually I think it was Bobby Bradley who first threw this out in the podcast, where he said he thinks an OB set should be negative points. And at first I was like, oh, well, I don't know. That's, 0 is already pretty harsh. But then when you consider that if you go out and you're playing tournament golf and you hit a ball OB, it's a stroke and distance penalty, right? In long drive, it would kind of make sense. Maybe you do get a point penalty. What do you guys think?
I'll let you handle that one, Raf.
I actually wouldn't. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. So,
what are your thoughts, Bobby?
Well, I'm kind of biased. I'm gonna hit the grid. So of course I would like for guys that are faster than me to get negative points if they go OB, but I think that slows them down. And at the end of the day, we are looking for the longest driver of the golf ball. So I don't think we should do anything that necessarily restricts players from feeling like they can't swing as fast as they want to. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that we have to do is educate long drivers, especially new long drivers to the game, that the first rule of long drive is hit the grid and then let it go, right? I mean, I think there has to be an importance of getting the ball in play, and obviously we're willing to experiment with formats. We did that several times this year, like in Hobe Sound, we did a double elimination and then went into the point system. And what we did with our ladies championship in Japan. And I think the statistics from this year show that model won't work. And they give you an example. When we ran the number of balls in play for our world championship, and it was about 10,632 balls that we measured, 37.5% of the balls were actually in bounds. So if you're going to run an event like we did with a ladies world championship where it's 3-ball average and you're only getting 6, that would require 50% of the balls being in play. So mathematically that doesn't work. So that's something we got to go back to the drawing board and talk with the JPDA and the rest of our association and see if that's something we want to explore. But I agree with you. The round robin, giving a player a chance to fly around the world and guaranteed opportunity of having 5 trips to the tee box, and in Justin's case where he went OB twice, he was able to overcome that by putting up some huge balls and getting back into the game. Where in double elimination, he'd have hit twice and been going home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's on a pendulum or a spectrum. Like on one side, you're going to be favoring a more consistent hitter, and on the other side, and you can go too far either way, where you're favoring the longest hitter. And obviously, it's long drive; you want the longest hitter. But like Ryan, you said, some people think we just go out and hit balls all day, and the longest one wins. That wouldn't work for many, many reasons. As you guys know, the wind would change, the conditions would change. It just wouldn't be fun to watch. It wouldn't be a structured competition. So, I think it's in a great place right now. And, little tweaks going forward. But that's one of the things that I've always said is so good about the PLDA is that people like you who have an incredible background in the sport are the ones who are running it. And so you're listening to the hitters, you're there, you're competing, and you've been competing for years. So you know what to look for, and what makes a good competition. Not to necessarily, denigrate somebody who comes from a different sport, but you guys know the sport. So you know what to do.
Well, I think the big thing with us is if we're going to grow the sport, we can't tailor the sport to the top 5% or the fastest guys in the world, because I guess players are going to start looking at, well, if I'm not 220 ball speed, I can't compete, right? And then how many 220 ball speed guys are there in the world? So how do you grow that division? So the round robin allows that, because those 220 guys are more apt to miss a grid. Because obviously, the further you hit the ball, the more apt you are to miss a grid, right? I mean, because if a ball is moving right to left or left to right, eventually it will go out of bounds. It just needs to go far enough to get out of bounds. So how do we create a fair competition that allows others the opportunity that if they do everything right, since there's no defense in this game, there is a possibility of winning or succeeding in the sport. Now, along that lines, we are looking at some other opportunities in the sport that we could bring in a different format or a different division that would stress more on accuracy, but that would be separate from our open division, which is going to be more about the power and speed and the longest person in the world. So those are there. And what we've done is we introduced, like we talked about a while ago with Sandy, the performance bonuses, most balls in the grid, best set, things like that, that even if you're out of the competition, your last set could matter, if you want to win that performance bonus. So it gives a person, I guess, a desire to do well even when they're out of the competition, right? Yeah,
for sure. And that's big. I've been fortunate enough to win a number of performance bonuses, and it can take a really sour feeling tournament, and then you're like, okay, well, I made some, I did a little bit, and that it does really change your attitude a lot. So let's get into a little bit, Ryan, what you kind of alluded to earlier, which is like a competitive golfer, a tournament golfer, somebody who just plays casually, I guess. Why should they want to hit it farther, and why should they kind of consider long drive as a good thing for their game?
Well, I think probably the best example that we've seen is with Bryson, and Bobby knows the history behind this a little bit more. But essentially the reason Bryson started looking at increasing his distance was because he was trying to create more efficiency in his golf game. And so the idea that if he can get, 20 or 30 or 40 yards closer to the green from his drive, then he's putting himself in a much better position to score. So as a golfer, hitting the drive further puts you closer and gives you a better chance to score, which lowers your scores, right? So that itself is good. Also, I think it helps players to develop, a better, more consistent launch and spin, right? Because a lot of times they don't pay attention to some of this stuff. They're just punching it out in the fairway, right? But if you're paying attention to the flight characteristics of that ball, like we do in long drive, that's going to help you out. You're going to be able to read conditions better, flight the ball better, and working on that drive. The more accurate you can get with your drive, the better off your golf game is going to be. So increasing the distance, improving the accuracy, it all helps.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I heard that right, but I mean, yes, the accuracy is important. When I did the podcast with Bryson, he said that there was some study that showed, I think it's if you gain 6 yards off the tee, if you gain 10 yards off the tee, you can be 6 yards more sideways and still score the same. Something like that. I'm sure I'm not getting the numbers quite right. But the point is that if you hit it farther, you don't need to hit it quite as straight and you're still going to score just as well or better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in long drive too, I don't think people realize this, but we're not just like gorillas out there swinging as hard as we can, right? Players are trying to shape the ball given the environmental conditions. So if you have a left to right wind or a right to left wind or a headwind or a tailwind, right? What is the different shot that you need to hit? And if you're playing golf, right, and you just have one shot, you're not really taking advantage of your drive like you could if you understood what shots to hit and when and how to hit them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time down at One Stop Power Shop. And Bobby, you and I have seen some weird things, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but there was one time that stands out to me right now where we were warming up under the covered awning. And I was hitting, I think it was a play driver, and I was swinging like 80%, hitting the balls out there. Then we switched balls. So I know it was a different ball that we were hitting with a long drive driver, and I was going hard, 100%. I don't know how many balls we hit, but when we went out to the grid, the longest ball was that play driver hit at 80%. Yeah. So how can you explain that?
Efficiency, I guess. The one that stuck out with me was the bird egg. We walked out and you were going to warm up, and there was a ball laying in the rocks that looked like a rocket been laying there so long, and you hit it. And I remember you hitting it. And when we went out to pick up the balls, you had like 3 balls over 380 that day. And on the right side of the grid at 380 exactly was that bird egg, nasty looking golf ball. And I'm like, how can your third or fourth ball of the day be one of the longest balls of the day, with all the balls that we did hit? And that's the mystery behind this is, I always ask people, what is your warm-up process? And then how do you know you're warmed up, right? So some people I've watched in the past actually burn themselves out on the driving range getting prepared to hit when possibly what they should have done was hit about, 25, 30 balls and gone and competed. Because, with this round robin format, it does last an hour and a half. So if you get warmed up an hour ahead, you've got to stay at peak performance for 2.5 hours. So
what do you look for yourself, or because you coach many of the top hitters in the world, what do you look for on that warm up and range session that would indicate that they're ready to go?
So I'll speak for myself on that one. I actually have a program that I use, and I hit 24 balls where I'm mentally focusing on certain positions in the swing and physically trying to do it. So I'm working my conscious and subconscious mind together with my physical body starting to warm up. And as I hit those points in the swing, I start to see the speed increase. And once I get past those 24 first shots in my 8 positions, then what I'll do is I'll do a 3 to 6 ball set to see where I'm at speed wise. And if my speed is good that day, then I know there's certain shots that I can hit. If my speed is bad, then I know there's certain shots I hit, where I would have to probably focus a little more on flighting the ball and things like that. But the whole time that I'm warming up, I'm actually trying to control things so that when I push my body to the next level, where I like to call the blackout phase, then hopefully my mechanics are good enough to offset the control loss or whatever so that I can still put balls in play. I was dead dog tired in Mesquite, couldn't generate any speed whatsoever, and was just before withdrawing before we even started. My legs were hurting so bad. But I noticed real quick that I couldn't hit a draw and get off my right side. So I went to the fade, and I noticed that in the second set when I think I went 2 for 6 out of that set. And I had a back-to-back set where I went all the way over to slot 4. And I just committed, I'm just going to finish this tournament and I'm going to hit fades and let the chips fall where they fall. And I'm sure other players have seen that, right? Where they thought, well, my God, what's happened to my speed? I mean, I don't want to throw Reed Russell under the bus, but because Reed had a great tournament in Utah, but then he got COVID right after that. And when he was hitting out there one day, I was looking at it and I was like, man, where's your speed at? And he goes, dude, I don't know. I guess I'm just not recovered yet from COVID. So we're not going to have our best stuff every day. And that's the challenge in the sport, right? If you don't have your best stuff, well, what are you going to do? I mean, you just going to fold your tent, pack your wagon and go to the bar? Or are you going to fight? And that's where I like to fight and see what I can get out of it. Because, I mean, it is a personal quest. Long drive is more about what we can do as individuals than anything else, any other sport I've ever played. So.
Yeah, it was right after Worlds, unfortunately, where you said to me, Bobby, you're like, your swing looks great, but I don't know what the ball is doing.
Yeah.
And it's an individual thing. I've got to figure that out. And it was, unfortunately, I had a bad day there, but it's a weird thing because my swing probably looked like if you took a video from the first day where I won all 5 sets, and then the next day where I had 2 OB sets. It probably looks right about the same, but something's different.
Yeah, what was different? I mean, I talked a little bit with Kyle afterwards, as you can imagine. And, the final 16, he had 300 points after the first 2 rounds. And his third ball in the third set, he hit really well, and it went out of bounds by an inch on the right. And he asked me, he said, did you see anything? And I'm like, no. You hit a great ball. It just went out of bounds. I mean, when you miss the grid by 1 inch, I mean, it's not mechanics in it. I mean, how do you tell somebody, you're lined up an inch too far right? Right? I mean, at that speed and that distance is crazy. And then he comes up in his 4th set, and his 4th ball in the 4th set, he hit out of bounds on the left by a foot that would have won the set. So both of those balls in would have given him 500 points, which would have put him in the final 8. Right? So when we're talking about a game of inches, a lot of times we're not just talking about a game of inches from A to B, but also X to Y, right to left. So a alignment issue or anything like that, a little bit of timing issue, all of that can really affect which way that golf ball is going and which way it bounces, runs out, and ultimately affects how you do in a tournament. So the more precise people can be in their warm-up, in their practice, and hopefully in their competitions, the better success and funner they'll have in events.
And just to speak to the 1 inch or 1 foot out, and people who are playing regular golf and like, I have a 30-yard wide fairway. You guys have a 50-yard wide grid. But if they miss the fairway, they're just in the rough or they're in the trap or whatever.
Yeah.
If we miss the grid by 1 inch, it's as good as out of bounds. So it's kind of a different, it's not apples to apples.
Well, it's a lot harder to hit a ball out of bounds on a 60-yard wide grid at 300 yards than it is to hit it out of bounds at 400 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Ryan, let me ask you, as far as your warming up and your prep, like how do you know when I think you follow a similar 24-shot process, but then when do you know when you're at your peak ready to step up on the tee?
Well, I have a baseball background, and I was a pitcher at the end of my baseball career. So I liken it to pitching. Like when I warm up for a competition, I do a few things before I even start hitting golf balls. I do some things to wake up my body. I basically try to get myself sweating before I even start hitting balls. So some of that is some stretching, like I do leg swings. I go over to something like a fence or something that I can hold on to, and I pull and I try and stretch my lats out. There's a few leg swings and things like that. But when I start hitting golf balls, even though I start with wedges, and I go through a process, right, with this where I'm trying to use my feet more than I am my arms and hands, trying to put pressure in my right leg, go back to my right foot, left foot. And then I start kind of moving up my body. So I'm incorporating more of my hips and then shoulders. And then when I go to my driver, I start that 24-shot process. That to me is more of like, kind of like a hose, I guess is how I look at it. I'm trying to get all the kinks out mechanically. And by the time I get to 24 swings, I should be most of the way, pretty much my body should be warmed up at that point. And I should be ready to just make athletic moves at the ball rather than thinking about, what are my hands doing? my foot pressure like, things like that, my shoulder turn, all of that should be out of the way, and I should be dialed in and just making athletic moves at that point. So
you're kind of like checking the boxes as you go, like thinking about a lot of things as you're warming up in the 24 shot process, so that then you can shut it off and you can just be an athlete. Is that right?
Yeah. Cause I've found like when I first started doing long drive, I would almost run out of time every set. I was like swinging like with 2 or 3 seconds left, because I would get up to the ball, and you'll see golfers that do this all the time, right? They have memes about this where the guy is like checking his this and that, and he's twitching and he's just trying to get everything exactly perfect. And so for me, and I think Dr. Mo, when you had him on the podcast, talked about developing a routine. So I've kind of gone to a routine that, like you said, checks those boxes off and simultaneously gets my body, ready to perform. But when I'm on the tee box, I don't want to be thinking about anything, maybe more than one thing. And so, like a lot of times I find that the process leads me to the same, I guess, swing thought when I'm on the tee box. And it's usually like take the club, keep it low as I take it away, or get my hands high, or something like that, or like turn fully away from the target as much as I can. But I don't want to be thinking about all 3 of those things, because I don't know what the timing, the exact timing of it is. But from when you start taking the club back to when you impact the ball, it's very little time. So if you're trying to think about all these things like that, you're going to inhibit your body's athleticism. So for me, it's more about if I can actually the best, when I hit the best, when I'm most competitive, is when I'm angry and I don't care. Like I'm fully all my chips are in, right? I'm fully invested in what I'm doing, and I don't care about anything other than just murdering that ball. But to get to that point, like if you're not in the right, athletic sequence, then you're in trouble. So you got to get into
it's funny you mentioned that, because you're like the nicest guy you could ever meet. And Bobby and I were actually talking about this at Worlds when there was something that was a little bit upsetting, but like we've never seen you get upset. You're always so nice. So how does that work then, to take your very kind personality and then get angry at the golf ball?
Well, it's not the golf ball. It's usually the competitor
okay.
So I do things, I manufacture things sometimes in my mind, or like Michael Jordan used to do this, where he would hear somebody's comment or read it in the paper, and regardless if he took it out of context or not, it didn't matter. What he was doing was getting himself angry. Part of the problem I've had recently, especially this year, is my mind is not in a competition mode when I compete now. So that's what I'm struggling with a lot of times, is that I don't have this, I have all these other things to worry about. So when I finally get to competing, it's kind of a nice like respite from the other things, but that doesn't lead to very good performances sometimes, And so, and really my concern is more about the competition and the players there, and not my competition and how I'm competing. So, and that's not an excuse. It's just the path I've chosen I've chosen to kind of put my competing as secondary to, running the PLDA and trying to do to the benefit of the player is what we're looking for. Like that's my focus now, is trying to make it as good of a competition as we can, for the players, for the organization, so we can continue to grow and develop. So from a performance perspective, that's not great for me, but
you've always been like very generous with your time. I remember the event that we had in China. That was before the PLDA was formed, but you were still, I think, calling balls in the grid. You were running around helping play. I remember all kinds of things. And, then magnify that even more now that you're a co-owner of the PLDA and you've got a bunch of roles to fill. So I imagine it has to be, and I think everybody can imagine how hard that would be to be doing all of these things and then flip the switch and get into, seeing red.
Yeah.
That may have been the true start of the PLDA.
I believe Bobby even said during that tournament, he's like, "You're not running this. Don't do this. Don't." So,
Yeah.
and I didn't.
Well, I wish you had been.
I
but
felt like we were.
Yeah.
yeah, in some ways.
Yeah.
Let me jump back a minute because Ryan, you mentioned a couple things about routine. I want to ask you, Bobby. We've all seen, because you have a great tournament background as well. We've seen people, reading a putt for 10 minutes, lining it up, standing over the putt for 30 seconds, and then they miss the putt.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people kind of argue you would have been better off literally just walking up, looking at it for a second and whacking it. Like, do you think that carries over to long drive as well?
Yeah, I think it's your first decision is most likely your right decision. Other than that, you start second guessing and things like that. So, having a plan is always a good way to do it. But you got to be in the moment, recognizing wind change and situational changes and things like that, right?
So sorry, let me ask you this while we're talking about it. So do you think that you can overanalyze? Because I think that that's one thing that you teach a lot is to try and analyze, right?
Yes.
So overanalyzing can be, how do you get past that? How do you solve that then? Just experience?
So in my experience, overanalyzing is the process of analyzing but not knowing how to come to a solution. So if you are analyzing and can't come to a solution, then you either don't know how to work the problem, or you don't have the speed in which to process the problem under a pressure situation.
Okay, that's what I meant by experience.
So
I think.
Experience and practice, and those that have come here have seen that I try to create a stress situation, to the point that, for lack of a better word, if I can make you angry or piss you off or whatever, right, to put you under stress here, if you can manage to come to a solution and fix that in a 2-minute and 30-second situation here in practice, then hopefully in a stressful situation during a tournament, those 2 minutes and 30 seconds are not long, right? Other than I've got the answer, now just let me execute, right? And if you don't execute, at least you know why you didn't execute, and you can make the adjustment and do it again.
Can I share an observation I had at Worlds? So when I was eliminated, I went to work in the tee box, and one of the players that I had the joy of calling balls for was Sam Judah. And
nice.
I don't know if you guys know this about Sam, but his routine when he comes onto the tee box is he sets his clubs and his gloves down on the ground, and then he walks over, and I think he either sets the tees down or the balls first, and then comes back and sets tees down, and then almost inevitably, Seamus, who's the MC, has to start the round. And so Sam is coming back right to where the balls are, where his clubs and his gloves are laying on the ground, and they start the set, and he grabs his gloves and starts to put them on.
Oh, boy. And
I just remember sitting there thinking, Sam, why don't you just put your gloves on and leave the glove on? Like, what? Yeah. Why are you taking them on and off all the time? Like, but his routine is just like you said. He tees it up, he walks into the shot, and he hits the ball, and then he tees another ball up, and so he never ran out of time ever. And me, I'm most of the time when Seamus is getting ready to start the set, I am lined up and I am on the ball, ready to go. So when he says, fire away, I'm ready to fire away. And I noticed that Martin Borgmeyer did that too. So everybody's got these different routines, and clearly not having his glove on does not concern Sam Judah one bit.
I always get a little nervous when I see you, Ryan, and you're like up there, you go through the full routine, and it's still a few seconds before Seamus says anything. I'm like, is he going to hit it? Like, we need to slow him down for a second. There was one time as well, I think Jeremy Nowak at Worlds, he was like fully ready to go, and he actually had to step away because there was some delay a little longer than he thought.
Yeah.
It's always funny though.
Yeah. I think why I do that is because I don't like hitting at the same time other guys are hitting for some reason. It's almost like if I just start and go, then I know I'm using all the time effectively, because some players they'll stand back and line it up and walk behind, walk into the ball, and other guys have already started hitting. So I don't know. Maybe we could take a poll and find out if other people don't like hitting while other players are hitting. But
I think that goes back to what your intent with your first ball is. I mean, my intent with my first ball is to get it in the grid, because I always feel like, that's free 25 points, right? And if everybody else misses, it's a free 200 points. Yeah, so my goal is, what is my go-to shot? And Mike Dobbins said this to me down in Mexico one time. We had an event, and I was like, man, just hit a cut out there in the grid. Let's get one in play, because it's a tight 40-yard grid and the wind's howling right to left. And he looked at me and he goes, well, Bobby, not everybody has a 300-yard buttercut like you do. And I looked at him and I said, why not? I mean, what's keeping every player on the planet from developing a little buttercut or a little draw, a shot that they know they can get a minimum yardage with, right, and then build on it? I mean, hell, Landon's built a career out of building on it, right? Ball in play, then a bigger one, then one that nobody could touch. So why not?
I'll tell you why, or at least I'll give you my part. So I think, for me, it seems like a wasted ball, especially with like the level of competition right now.
Yeah.
When you have two OB sets, it's not a wasted ball. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, fortunately for me, I've been putting more balls in play than in the past. But
I tell you what, a wasted ball is when you don't have a ball in play and you try to do that with your sixth ball.
Yeah.
And it goes OB, and then you go, oh crap.
I think for me personally, like lately, I've been putting more of my first ball in play. And then what I try to do is go crazy after that, and that doesn't help. So,
that goes back to the whole, sequencing, timing, whatever it is that makes sometimes an easier feeling shot go farther. But it was cool to, like, you and I now have done a good amount of commentary on the live stream there, Ryan, and we see a lot of times there are certain hitters that when they get their first one in, then they just go crazy and they really do build on it.
Yeah.
Well, I just pulled up Ryan's statistics from Worlds, and Ryan was he had 37% of his balls in play, and he was ranked 82nd.
Yeah.
So maybe
82.
more balls in play.
It's better than 83.
Well, it's not. Yeah, but see, I'm not trying to not hit the grid. I'm still trying to hit.
Yeah.
So I will say this though: a lot of times my first ball is my longest ball. So unwrap that, statistical guru.
Well, what I'll do is after this call, I will dig into it, because we have the balls in this format where I can pull up your first ball and play yardage, and we'll see.
That.
Yeah, so I think that'll go back to more of I think I do this versus this is what I actually do, and that's what I hope to accomplish with all these stats. We always talk about what you feel ain't real, and if you feel like your first ball is your best ball, and the statistics show that your fifth ball or your sixth ball is your best ball, then maybe your mindset might need to change as you turn 45 next year and get your first ball in play.
So yeah, we'll break that down. I'm not saying my first ball is always my best ball. I'm just saying that I think that where I'm at right now is I'm putting more balls in play.
Right.
But I try to overswing inadvertently when I get a ball in play. I think okay, I can I'll tell you right now, like my first set against Josh Koch on Thursday, I was 74, he was 78. I think it was like his first or second ball. And then I felt like, okay, I got to like try and bury him. I got to try and like go after it. And I think I hit another set, a 374, but nothing after that was longer. So I finished second that round. Yeah. But I think I would have been better in retrospect, just trying to like keep hitting balls in play, center contact, flight the ball better. But as a long driver, it's so hard to do that. Like you want to just, there's a payoff for swinging as hard as you can. Even though you generally make better contact, but there is like a physical, or maybe it's a biological response to doing that. So
I don't want to hijack the podcast here because crushing it's pretty awesome, but this may be fun for people to learn. Since we're specifically talking about that set with you and Josh Koch, and you went 374 and he went 378, what level 1 to 10 did you put into that first swing?
I don't recall.
Okay,
but usually the first swing of the because that would have been the very first swing of the entire competition for me that day. And usually there's some adrenaline when you're walking up to that tee box. So I usually am trying to calm myself down a little bit and just try and do, I'll tell myself to make a full swing, which to me means to get, don't cut anything short, go through the whole long process and try and set my hands, high and deep, and then go from there. Because once you start to turn and go back towards the target and pull down,
But here's the Sigmund Freud of that. Let's say your first ball, when you went 374, you put maximum effort into it, whether you believe you did or didn't.
Whether I realized it or not.
Right. And you got 374 out of it, right? But you might not have got the right puff of wind, or you might not got the right bounce. So then your next shot, you think, well, I'm going to go faster than I just went. Well, if you put in 100%, you can't put in 105, right? So then does it become, okay, I'm going harder and I'm hitting it less efficient, and that's why you didn't get a larger number. So these are things you and I probably need to dig into in the off season, is if you're going to put a maximum swing on your first set and it's not the yardage you want, do you really need to try to amp it up from there, or do you need to calm it down? So here we go. We're still learning years into this. And those are things that players need to think about, right?
My brain just melted.
I'm sorry.
Well, and to your point, Bobby, of how you put people under stress when they're down there competing, because your feelings and your thoughts and everything change so much in that moment versus if you're just out at your home driving range, hitting balls with your flight simulator, doing whatever, or launch monitor, whatever it is. And, the feeling is so different. But Ryan, I think, what you were saying, why do we go to that point of thinking I've got to just really max everything out? And I think it's because in practice, we do hit that one ball that's perfect. Everything syncs up and you hit it and you know that you're going to beat everybody with that ball. So I think then when you're competing, subconsciously, okay, I've got to hit that ball. I know I just hit that ball the other day or earlier today. I'm going to do it again. And it's that addicting feeling where addictive, if you hit that, you're going to win.
Yeah. So we've come full circle here because you've talked about why a normal tour or golfer would want to get into long drive. And first of all, it's a different competition. And Bryson, when I was talking to him about this, I think he put it really well. In tournament golf, you're trying to control your emotions and level everything out, right? You're trying to keep an even temperament through it, right? But in long drive, it's more primal, I guess. I don't know. It's you versus them. It's not a smooth, wedge into the green. It's an aggressive, athletic, explosive move, and so to me, it brings out more of, I guess, that primal instinct, right? And there is adrenaline. I'm sure there's, this is, I always imagined, being over the ball putting for the Masters or something, right? The pressure that would go along with that. But how do you get so amped up to do this? To me, that doesn't seem fun, but long drive is fun because, you take it back and you give it a full go. And there's like I said, an immediate, physiological response from your body of the adrenaline, of the pressure, the time, you're hitting balls, you're behind or you're ahead. You just hit a ball and now you're 15 yards beyond everybody else in the group. It's a totally different response than hitting a nice wedge into the green and putting it within 2 or 3 feet. It's just, to me, I love golf. I enjoy golf, but golf just does not offer that. So. I
saw a documentary the other day on Brock Lesnar, and it reminded me of what we're doing hitting golf balls. And they asked him, well, you grew up fighting and all this. Why? And he said, because it's just a euphoric feeling of manhandling another person, right? And I don't think I want to manhandle anybody, but when I crush a golf ball, it's just like you said, euphoric feeling of, oh my God, I did that, right? And it's like I want to do it again and again. So,
and it's when you add that competitive nature where I crushed a golf ball and it beat everybody else trying to crush the golf ball.
Yeah.
For me, that makes the difference.
Yeah.
But Ryan, I don't know if I would agree and say that in tournament golf, you want to like suppress the emotions. I think there's probably a way to manage it, but everybody's got their own. But I would definitely agree that long drive is much more primal.
Yes.
It's, you get that like inner kick that you can't get in tournament golf. Because in tournament golf, you can't, like if you get really amped up, you have to channel it in a different way. You can't say, I'm going to hit this pitching wedge really hard. That's not going to be conducive to good scores. But it's like in a survival.
Maybe that's why I'm not good at golf.
I think we all get there sometimes, but like if you go back to, human history way back when it was like a survival scenario, you would get that fight or flight response in, probably more situations than you do today. So then competing in a sport like long drive where you're able to put everything into it is probably really good for you. And it certainly feels good to do it.
Yeah. I think that that's one of the most fun parts about it, that people that have never done it, they don't realize until they do it, and then they love it. Like I say that all the time when I'm on interview, whatever I'm doing, and people ask me about it. But there is just something that is more enjoyable about smashing a drive, center face, punch, like the flight of the ball, everything looks good. There's a response that you enjoy, and like you said up on the driving range, right? You're practicing, you're working, trying to draw a perfect circle is an analogy that Bobby uses all the time, right? We're trying to do everything just exactly perfect to hit that best shot. And then once you do it, you want to do it again, right? Mm-hmm. And you're chasing that. So I think that from a athletic or sports standpoint, long drive is really fun. And you don't have to go do it for 5 hours, right? Like I can't even play 9 holes of golf anymore. I have to play 18 or it's unfulfilling to me for some reason. So, but like I can go hit drives for an hour and a half or 2 hours at the driving range and feel satisfied and feel fulfilled, I guess. So there's a lot of really good reasons, but the most fun is when you get up on the tee box in competition and it's you versus those other competitors. There's just something really enjoyable about that. And if you are an athlete and you've not experienced that for a long time, you should come out and try long drive. And you see like Bryson or Martin or whomever, when you go watch those finals, I mean, they are so amped up, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
It's an amazing feeling. And I remember the second round of Worlds, I wasn't feeling that great, but it was like I was, warming up, and I stepped up on the first tee and I still felt kind of tired. And then it just like hit me. I was like, I'm at the World Championship. This is go time. Like I need to make it happen now. And my body like started, like I got goosebumps and I started, breathing harder, and I got so excited. Whatever that kick of adrenaline was unreal. And you can't simulate. I've never simulated that in another way. I guess I have like a wrestling background in high school and some other, martial arts and stuff, but it's just, it's an amazing feeling.
You've been holding out on this the whole time? I didn't know you did any of this stuff, Steve.
Yeah. I mixed results. It was like, so I played golf a lot growing up. And that was like where my, I guess, technical stuff, baseball and golf. And then in high school, I started wrestling, and you had kids that I was wrestling against who started wrestling when they were 3 or 4. So they know this like massive database of moves and what do you do when this guy does that? And I was just like, I don't know, I'm pretty strong. I'll try to grab the guy and hold him down, but I didn't do all that well because of that. So there was one time, I think I talked with somebody I thought about on the podcast, but maybe not. But I went to this meet. It was on a Saturday, and you do like a bunch of different rounds and stuff like that. And I was in the heavyweight category, which is anything over 215. And I weighed like 217 at the time, but we had a really good 215. And so you could be 215 to 275. And that's a huge weight range for any class. And my very first opponent weighed in at 274.9. And I was like,
he was cutting weight just to get there, huh?
Probably. I'm sure he went and hydrated and ate some donuts and whatever, and probably got up to 280 by the time we were, and he got on top of me, and I was like, I can't do anything. So.
Yeah. Steve, we need to flip this, the next podcast, and interview you.
Sounds good. So let's kind of shift topics here. Get back to where we're looking now. So I know there's a lot of stuff still being formed, and I'm not asking for anything that the public shouldn't know, but what can people expect, I guess in a broad brush perspective, for the PLDA for 2023?
So as in year one, we expanded, and we want to expand next year. We want to add more venues, more opportunities. And I think we've got a great partner in Bridgestone. So we have a golf ball now, which was probably one of the most stressful things on me this year, was how to find a golf ball that I guess was made for long drive, right? Versus we just need a ball, right? Bridgestone actually stepped up with their new technology and produced a ball that is actually designed for this distance, which will, come out a little bit more.
And not just designed like hard compression, right? Because it's not a really hard compression ball.
No.
But it flies well. It flies really well. So
yeah, it flies really
Steve,
well. It actually.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We didn't get to test it a lot. We had a ball similar to what it was going to be that we passed out in Utah for everybody that was there to have an opportunity to hit a Bridgestone ball. This ball is seamless, so that's something unique that hasn't been there before. And Ryan's right. The compression is just one data point. It's not necessarily the one that makes it aerodynamic. Having a ball that actually spins correctly will fly better, and that directly attributes to distance, right? So I know we've heard it a lot in the past where people have hit golf balls and go, oh my God, he broke that ball. He didn't break the ball. The spin rate might be 700. So it can't fly. It just crashes, out of control in the ground, where we didn't see a lot of that this year, unless you really just kind of heel shank one and, you saw a few nose dives down into the ground, but yeah.
Yeah, that was really uncommon to see that.
Yeah, and I think growing our brand as far as the, partnership that we had at Worlds with Top Tracer was a big plus too. So continuing to do that, hopefully we can work something out in the off season. I don't think it's feasible to bring them out. I can't remember how many cases, like 21 cases. Is that right? Around 19 of hardware that they had to ship in. So it's pretty cumbersome to think that we're going to be able to do that at all of the tour events. But I think a thing for us is to have quality tour events to increase the prize purse and continue to grow the sport of long drive.
Yeah, one of the things we experienced this year was increased field sizes. So the very first year we did, I think that the largest field size we had was like 27, maybe 32 at the national championships. But this last year, we would set the field at like 32 players, and it would almost inevitably go to 48. We had 64-man tournaments. So it's difficult for us to go more than 64 players and complete the competition in one day. So when you go, and really 64 should be a two-day tournament, to be honest with you. So, there's things that we can try and do to offload some of maybe the qualifying process, which is one of the things we'd like to do, is take that more to the players where they're located. So we're working to try and build out to have more tournament directors get involved, so they're running local qualifiers. Here's a good example. There's areas that we're not even touching right now, like Texas, for example. We didn't have any qualifiers in Texas. Texas is an enormous state, a large golf state too, and so that's something that we needed to do a better job of is finding facilities where we can have these qualifiers at, which will attract more players. Growing our member base is something that we're really focused on. We want to try and have more incentives for players to become members and to compete, and give them more opportunities to compete closer to home. That's, for me, I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to work out. But we're limited a lot of times in facilities, right? If you know of an area that has a driving range or some place that would go 440 or 50 yards with a warm-up area, reach out to us and let us know. We want to probably go there. So that's a real obstacle that we have to overcome, which is, hopefully why we can use technology for first stage qualifying to get people, because I think that even though it's using technology, it's good enough to get people advancing to stage 2, right? So that's one of the things we want to focus on, is taking long drive to the people rather than the demand of them coming to where we're at, traveling, having the expenses of doing that. So, but definitely more. I mean, our goal is to have thousands and thousands of people competing in long drive every week throughout the world. That would be, I'd say our ultimate goal is to just continue to grow it globally. We added in South Korea, we added a company this year for 2023 that's it's Golf Zone GDR. They have about 300 facilities in South Korea that they own and operate that are indoor simulators that use their Golf Zone simulator. They're going to run qualifiers now in Korea. So things like that, where we're expanding into areas where we've had some Korean players, but we haven't had any qualifying happening in Korea. Europe is one that we really want to tap into heavily, because there's so many countries and so many players in the past that have come from Europe. And this year I felt like the representation from the European countries was really lacking. And for whatever reason, and I think COVID is still had an effect on that. Hopefully we continue to move away from those challenges and borders open up and travel becomes easier. But definitely the international competitors. That's one of the reasons why we expanded the field to 128 competitors this year in the open division. We may need to expand the senior division. We had the senior division and amateur division was capped at 32 players, and they filled up really quite quickly.
Yeah.
Let's get into that. I know this is a bit of a change of topics, but Bobby, you brought it up earlier. Ryan, he'll be now a rookie next year in the Masters division. So are we going to be looking for that?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. I talked to Ed. So this year, the World Championship, Eddie Fernandez was our senior division champion, and he is good enough to compete for a championship in the open division. His strategy, though, this last week was to not do that, to just compete in the senior division instead of do both. We saw Jeff Gavin, who's I think he's over 50, and he did both the open very well. What's that?
54.
So Jeff Gavin, he made it to, I think he made top 16, or maybe he just missed out getting to the top 16 in the play. I can't remember if that was in the final 8 or 16, but
he lost in the 3-way playoff with Sam Judah, Bryson, and himself
to get into the 8.
To get into the top 16, Bryson six balled him.
So, I mean, that's pretty impressive for a guy to 54 years old to finish 17th.
Yeah.
And he was still in the mid-teens, for club head speed. So, super impressive by Jeff. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. We'll see. I tell you what I do need to do is I need to get back in the gym and back swinging a lot more than I did. I think I went to the gym. I looked it up the other day, and it was like from the 1st of July to the World Championships. I think I went to the gym 7 times. So that was almost 3 months, I guess.
I just need Steve to come back and stay with me 3 months again. The last time he was here, I was over 200 ball speed. So
that's right. I remember well.
It's your fault. I suck. So, yeah, it'd be nice to just have to sit around and worry about hitting golf balls for a little while, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
well, it is cool to see how, because obviously the open division, there's a ton of great hitters, but in the senior division as well,
yeah.
You mentioned Eddie and Jeff Gavin, but Zach Adams, a lot of other guys are really moving it. It's a strong field right now.
I'll be a rookie in the super seniors next year. So,
yeah.
So, hopefully,
one thing kind of going back to what we're trying to do for next year is we always have a focus on growth, improving quality, getting long drive out to competitors. But we saw a lot of new growth this year, new competitors coming in that experienced success rather quickly. So that's kind of a push back to, if people are hearing this or they know people, and I say this all the time, like 90% of long drivers get into long drive because somebody else encourages them to do it. They say, wow, Steve, you really hit the ball long. You should try this long drive thing. And then they do try it and they end up loving it. And so if you or someone has a distance problem where they hit the ball really long, you need to encourage them to get into long drive. So that's kind of the secret of it all. I think is the more competitors we have, that's going to be a challenge for us, but it's a good challenge to have because then we can start doing more events in more places, and it brings more eyeballs to the sport, right? Which is what we need to help grow and facilitate. But we are working all the time to try and bring in people to the sport, whether it's through sponsorship or growth in players or just getting people involved that may provide a positive light on the sport, right? We want to try and do that. We want to do everything that we can to grow and develop the sport of long drive.
I think that'd be a good call of action for the videos. Everybody who thinks they can hit it far or have been told they can hit it far, try long drive. Try it one time. Sign up for a qualifier, do something, and give it a shot. And see where you are now and try to get an assessment of where you can go. And if you don't think you can hit it all that far, maybe try the amateur division. Not that they don't hit it far. I'm certainly not saying that, but it's a slightly different level. So everybody should go try it out.
Yeah, I want to toot our horn a little bit if we can, Steve. One thing that never seems to get asked, and it wasn't even asked this year when Ryan was giving his little speech at the awards banquet, we had not even put out the prize purse. We were able to pay out in all of our championships, ladies division, open division, amateurs, seniors, super seniors, a total of $322,600 this year. So that puts the PLDA in 28 months. We've paid out over $1 million back to the players. And a lot of people keep asking, well, how are you doing it? Where are you getting the money at? Well, we don't have any huge sponsorships. We've had a few, like, Crank Golf, Tornado TET Claw, have given some money, and we really appreciate what they've been able to do. But we don't have those huge sponsorships that were there in the past. What we're good at is we actually watch the pennies. All right, and I always say if you take care of the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. So we're not out wasting money. We're not taking salaries. We're working our keisters off here to try to put on a great event and to help grow the sport, and I want to squish any belief out there that the PLDA staff is taking money, or I heard a rumor the other day where somebody said that we pocketed $1.3 million. Well, that's a damn lie. I mean, what we have done is we've paid the money back to the players, and all of that's documented. And I think that we're preparing an Excel spreadsheet of this year's payout for Mesquite to show where every dime was paid back to the players. And I think that's a tribute to what we've been able to do. And in this day of what do you call it? Proclamate, I don't even know what you call it, self-claiming promotion or whatever. The PLDA is here for the players, and we hope that all the players see that and will continue to come out and play with us.
Well, it's easy to be critical of whatever you want if that's your mindset, and especially if you're ignorant on certain topics. But I think anybody from an objective perspective would say that the PLDA is for the players and has done an amazing job considering where the sport was left in 2020 when the entire season was canceled by WLD. Now, you guys have, like you said, paid out over $1 million in 28 months. That's, it's incredible. And without you two guys, and of course we already said that there are others, I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but without you two guys, it wouldn't happen. This podcast wouldn't exist, and I'm thankful to be the host of it. And, you guys really are doing and have done a great job, and I'm excited to see what's coming forward in 2023.
Well, we appreciate you, Steve. A lot of people, I don't know if they know how this podcast even came about, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, I would love to do a podcast. I think we need to do one. And we had been in conversations with you, and you had mentioned about being willing to help out. And I called you up and I said, Steve, I think we need to do a podcast. Could you do that? And you sacrifice a lot yourself to do this. It's a lot of work putting these on. I think scheduling this podcast took you a lot of time to do that because our schedules have been a little wonky lately. But I want to tell you of our appreciation for what you're doing as a podcast, and it's growing. We're getting more and more subscribers and viewers. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, subscribe, share it, give us a good rating, but do it for Steve. Do it for Steve because he is the man behind the podcast. And I listen to every single one of them. And even me being in the sport, 12 years, 13 seasons, like I learn stuff all the time from the podcast. So if you're into golf and want to hit the ball further, the podcast is a really good place to go to get information and to learn about the history and learn who the players are and their background and get to know them. It's a very unique sport. Some people don't realize that you can sign up for a membership and sign up for competitions and be on the tee box with Kyle Berkshire. Like the very first tournament you enter, you could be on the tee box with Kyle Berkshire.
Or Bryson.
Or Bryson.
Or Martin, or Justin.
I mean, it's pretty amazing that our sport is that way. Who knows how long it'll stay like that, right? If we grow out of that, I think that's a good thing. But right now, take advantage of that if you're interested in getting into the sport. But Steve, thank you again for all your hard work. We appreciate it, and we know it's a sacrifice, and you do a great job with it.
Well, thanks, man. It's been a lot of fun, and like you said, there is a lot of information in these podcasts. I've been able to talk with a lot of great. I mean, the very first episodes were with Jason Zubak, and then all kinds of people that share a ton of knowledge. And if you don't know anything about the sport, or if you want to get better, or something in between, you just want to listen to a conversation, there's definitely some content that you'll enjoy. So it's been a lot of fun for me. So, all right, I got to ask one more time though, and I know you probably don't want to give up this information, but when can people expect either a schedule or like a tentative first event for when we're going to be starting in 2023?
So I would say mid to late November, maybe early December, we should have a pretty good idea on the schedule. So I would say we typically want to announce it. If we have an event in January, I would be surprised at this point, but it's possible. But probably first week of March is probably going to be our first competition. So at the earliest, towards the end of January, but probably the first week of March at this point.
Okay.
And then hopefully we'll have the whole schedule out by the end of November, first part of December.
Okay. Anything we can know now about the number of events?
I think it's going to be at least similar to this year. Probably
more.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I hope to have you guys on individually because we've talked a ton about the PLDA, but you guys have hours and hours of stories and insight and experience and stuff that would help all kinds of golfers and long drivers. So I hope we can do that at some point, but this has been great. And I'm very excited about where the sport is. I hope everybody watching is as well. And again, hats off to you guys. You've put in so much work and gotten it here.
Well, if we do an individual one, it'd be nice to put out like a poll of questions that maybe people won't answered instead of us. Because I'll ramble.
We can definitely come back.
Subject. But I think there's a lot of topics that we could discuss, and I mean, anything from equipment to training to any insights. I mean, I'm willing to share if it helps grow the game, and I know Ryan is as well. Or
if it's just, personal, like you also you're a chicken farmer. Yeah. I mean, you've got a million different things that we could just talk about to get to know you more as an individual as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff hopefully we can get into in the future. Bobby
Bradley always says the PLDA started on a chicken farm in North Carolina. And he's right. I mean, I think we were, as an organization, lucky to have a facility that we could run some events in 2019 to hopefully save the sport of long drive. And I'm thankful to April for allowing me to build it. So it goes back to sort of like that movie Kevin Costner, build it, they'll come. And Damn if y'all didn't.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time. So PLDA on YouTube, Prolong Drive. I should have known this. Is it Prolong Drivers or Prolong Drive on Instagram?
Prolong Drive on Instagram. The website is prolongdrivers.com. So Prolong Drive on Instagram and Prolong Drivers on the website. Check it out. PLD. Just type in, search PLDA in YouTube. We'll come right up.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody.